Handshake is not a meeting. A conversation is not a casual conversation. Is not some furtive attempt to subvert democracy and swing the election results. And nobody straight-facedly believes that or suggests that. I think the recusal has also been. I think it's spurred into other issues.
Oh, that's Counselor to the President Kellyanne Conway, of course, this morning, defending Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Ms. Conway saying, in her view, there is nothing to the new revelations from the Washington Post that Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak told his Moscow bosses that he and then Senator Jeff Sessions discussed campaign-related issues during last year's presidential race. In fact, those were supposedly substantial discussions. Well, of course, now Attorney General Sessions has long denied such allegations. Meanwhile, as for Mr. Kislyak, a controversial figure who's been tied to the Russian investigations and veteran of Moscow's diplomatic corps, he has ended his tenure in Washington as the investigations continue. The Russians say, as of last night, he has now left our country for reassignment back in Moscow. Ambassador John Bolton knows him. He's a former U.S. ambassador to the nation, senior Fox News contributor, senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, and chairman of the Gatestone Institute here in New York. So, Ambassador, first off, do you think that Kislyak accomplished his mission? And what was that? Was it to sow Russian chaos, advance Russian influence, and push Russian interests in our nation's capital?
Well, I think his mission was certainly to push Russian interest, which includes getting to know as many senior political figures, commentators, business people, as he possibly can. Do I think he directed the Russian influence operation? No, I think that was from the FSB or some other element of Russian intelligence. He may have been aware of it, but he's a diplomat, not a spy master, despite the fact that's what some people have said. You know him very well. You've worked alongside him. What's he like? Well, he's not a warm and fuzzy kind of guy, I guess I'd put it that way. I wouldn't confine my deepest secrets in him if my life depended on it. He's kind of an old Soviet-style diplomat, but he's obviously well thought of. That's why he got the job in Washington, and it's entirely possible, as some are suggesting now, he may go on to be Russian ambassador to the UN. So all I can say is, Nikki Haley, get ready for this. Oh, man. Meanwhile, tomorrow and on Tuesday, the House and Senate Intelligence Committees will be hearing from Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, of course, who'll probably be asked about Kislyak, and, of course, the meeting, with Natalia, the Russian lawyer, and those others. What do you expect Jared, will say in terms of that meeting? He supposedly was only there, according to Donald Trump Jr., about 10 minutes, and any interactions that they may have had with Kislyak. Well, look, as I say, Kislyak's job is to get to know people in an election year. I think he is probably typical of every other ambassador in Washington, trying to see what they can learn about the potential new president. Now, most of them felt, as did virtually the entire American political commentariat, that Trump had no chance of winning. So I'm not sure exactly how much time and attention they really devoted to that part of it. It doesn't surprise me at all that Kislyak was making an effort, but I think the disinformation campaign that Russia was waging really went on despite or without regard to the contacts Kislyak was trying to make. So you see two separate operations potentially there? Well, here's a news flash for a lot of commentators in Washington today. It's one of the functions of diplomats to gain information about the countries they're accredited to. It's not just spies who do it. And, if a diplomat can find somebody who talks too much, boy, that's their best friend. And that's what they do. And I think campaigns need to be aware of that and to maintain an appropriate level of prudence and security. I mean, would you be troubled? He apparently was caught on these intercepts telling his bosses in Moscow about Jeff Sessions, that they had all these discussions about the campaign and about Trump's strategy. Is that wrong? Sessions was, of course, a member of the Armed Services Committee at the time and had met Kislyak in his office. Well, Sessions denies that they had those kinds of conversations, and here's another startling revelation. In the course of diplomatic history over the last 10,000 years or so, some diplomats have been known to exaggerate their accomplishments in reporting back to their capitals. Think about that one for a minute. Although he has been described as being very professional. I mean, bottom line, he leaves our country, goes back to Moscow. Look to what's happening on Capitol Hill in Congress on Tuesday. There'll be a new Russian sanctions bill.
Vladimir Putin will not be happy with that at all. Here's what the Wall Street Journal says about that today. It says it would tighten restrictions on the extension of credit to Russian entities and limit Russian businesses in the energy defense sectors from partnering with U.S. citizens. It would also require the president to seek Congress's permission to relax any sanctions against Russia. A failure to sign the bill could prompt criticism that Mr. Trump is siding with Vladimir Putin amid investigations into the Russian interference in the election and into possible ties between Mr. Trump's associates and Russia. I mean, in a way, some say this is a slap in the face of the president, tying his hands. On the other hand, it really is not what the Russians would have wanted, and Kislyak, I would think, has some explaining to do.
Yeah, I would have to say, regarding Sergei, he is more likely to go down in American history than he is in Russian history, given all this attention. I think, honestly, the odds are the president will sign this sanctions bill. I understand and share the concern about the constitutionality of the efforts to put restrictions on his waiver power. I think what I would recommend is they sign the bill, but issue a signing statement that says if it comes down to it, the president will regard these restrictions as infringing on his foreign affairs power and would be prepared to disregard them. That's what presidents do. They issue those kinds of signing statements. Congress can't pass unconstitutional legislation, even if it's 100-0 in the Senate and 435-0 in the House. Ultimately, it's still unconstitutional. That's the line I would draw for the president.
Yeah, everyone's going to be watching to see what the president does. And finally, just quickly, I mean, expect Kislyak will be back at the UN to talk about him having a big job at the UN in a few months.
Well, I'll have to speak to Nikki Haley about this and tell her a little bit of the background because she may find it helpful. At least I hope she would.
All right, we'll see what happens. And if he does assume residence in New York, Ambassador John Bolton, who knows those halls well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Eric.